would be that there was maybe your darker soil was bad, like potting mix by accident, or maybe it was mixed with the potting soil. Oh, who knows? Without seeing the soils, like that's kind of tough to say. There's always some exceptions. That's the clumsy part about this lab. Yeah.
What were we supposed to see when we found what type of soil it was with the soil triangle?
It was just practicing these different ratios,
okay,
so that you like see how soils vary. Really, the part the College Board wants you to know, I think, is that like sand is inert, so it like helps water go through it. It doesn't hold anything, and that there's different soil types, so that you can get like this is the variables in soil. Yeah.
I missed the first part of that question, but I was asking if there's like a sweet spot with water retention, if there's ever like too much water retention.
Kind of depends what you're growing.
Okay.
So like if you're trying to grow like pitaya, dragon fruit, you want like very low water retention because it's like a desert cactus and so it doesn't like sit in water. If you're trying to grow like carrots and beets, they tend to like pretty wet soils, so you want like fine grain. Kind of depends what you're growing. Please take out your study guide. It's only if you want it to. I don't need to see it again. This is the 4th time I'll tell you this. I hope you've seen it enough by now to trust me on it. 1/3 of your exam is just straight out of the homework and doesn't get stars and doesn't come up in class. Stars doesn't tell you what to study. It just tells you where you should have additional notes beyond the homework. That's all stars are for. You should have notes on top of what you did at home. Undernourishment, malnourishment, kwashiorkor marasmus, Bacillus thuringiensis, Green Revolution, and that whole section where it says, ask me to add in class, all of those. Tillage, no-till, no-till, POPs, monoculture, and desertification. Please notice, students confuse this all the time. They're two separate terms, sometimes associated. Erosion is when you lose dirt. That can be good dirt, that can be bad dirt. Erosion is just the loss of dirt. Desertification is when good dirt loses its quality and becomes desert sand. You could imagine how these are connected. If you start with good dirt and you turn it into crap, nothing can grow. Once there's nothing growing, it's more likely to erode over time. So this can lead to that. Sometimes if all the organic material erodes away, then your soil can lose quality over time. So these can get mixed together, but remember that they're two separate terms. Are there any questions about that?
Can it erode before it goes through desertification?
Yeah, it is possible for good dirt to erode. Next, phloem and xylem, fitting and patchiness. Study goals 2, 3, 5, 6. Eight, 12, 14, 16, 18. 8, 12, 14, 16, 18. 21, 23. 24, 27, 28, 31, 33, 35, 40, 44, 47, 49, 52, and 56. Now, I want to help improve your notes a little bit. I think we've done pretty much everything. There was like one study goal I didn't get to finish the other day with like a slideshow. Then I want to skim over the movie questions and the reader questions. We'll look at the Unit 3 exam from last unit, and if we have time, I'll take you on a little tour of our school garden if the time allows. Any questions for me? So you should have your big packet of notes. I'm pretty sure we finished 4.1. Could you all double check your 4.1 and see if there's something missing? Did we leave any notes to come back later? Anything in 4.1? I feel confident about that one, but you tell me. Last call for 4.1? Okay, please go to the end of assignment 4.2. Are the flies worse than usual this fall?
Yeah, really annoying.
It's pretty horrible, right?
You should get the sugar in the bowl and then you dangle the whole thing down.
Okay, 25 and 26. We're going to go a little bit out of order. Joseph. Okay. So, we were talking yesterday, I think we got interrupted by the bell, right? We have this amazing country with all this spectacular land, and sometime along the way we got this idea to protect some federally, correct? Mm-hmm. I should have stopped myself a little bit to do this, but for study goal number 26, the federal government controls a lot of our land for us with different degrees of protection. Please look up. There's the Bureau of Land Management, the National Forest Service, National Park Service, and a special designation called wilderness. As that goes up, they're more and more protected. I'll talk more about these.
The only thing you didn't go over is wilderness.
As I was saying yesterday, BLM, corporations get to benefit, we just get a cut of the profits because we rent the land out. Forest Service means that we get to use it ourselves within some limits. So you can take an animal, you can take a fish, you can take a tree, you can even take some gold. You're allowed to gold pan in national forests as long as you have the right paperwork. National Park is super protected. Nobody takes anything. The only impact we're allowed to make is just to increase visitorship. Sage, I said all those yesterday?
Yeah.
And finally, wilderness, that is the most protected land. We're not allowed to leave any evidence there at all. As a matter of fact, in some parts of wilderness, there aren't even signs on the trails. In wilderness, we close trails if the trail is getting too deep. Wilderness, no motorized vehicles, no power tools. Wilderness is, if you can't get there on your own 2 feet, you can't go. No wheelchair access, no bathrooms, no fire pits, no bikes on trail, no dogs on trail, no parking spots. Wilderness is the most protected. Yeah.
But you can still walk through it?
Generally, although there are limits. If it's shown that your walking has an impact on its wilderness, then no, you can't. In the spectrum of protection, BLM is just kind of like held publicly but not very protected. National Forest is held publicly and used publicly. National Park is not even there for usage. It's just there for aesthetics and recreation. But wilderness is kind of the apex of protection. And if you look at my blue, something I've added today to that spectrum is how much acreage there is of each. We've got a ton of BLM, kind of a lot of forest, not a ton of parks, and even less wilderness. In terms of acreage, we have the most of BLM and the least of wilderness. I don't know how much you all pay attention to, yeah?
How in like, when I went to Yellowstone this summer, there was like a bunch of like sidewalks and railing and everything, and since it's a national park, how would they get like a permit to build like that much stuff? Because they have like restaurants and they have roads and everything like that. Like, do they just need permits for that, or is it like, are they allowed to do that?
So the purpose of the national parks is to encourage and welcome visitorship. Their whole raison d'etre, like the whole reason that they exist, is to get people to enjoy being there. So sometimes if you're too far from other food sources, you kind of got to have some restaurants, and you kind of got to have, like, Yosemite Valley has supermarkets, because they figure it's more impact for people to keep driving in and out to get food than it is to just have some food there. And so we want to welcome the public as much as the place can hold without an impact. And sometimes with that many people, you got to give them some access. And you got to give them some extra provisions or whatever. So, I don't know how much we want to get lost in the weeds here. National Park normally has a 2-mile buffer around asphalt for all impact. So you can have wheelchair access on the first 2-mile radius from the asphalt, and after that it becomes foot trail. You can have like campsites, parking, markets, power lines, all that stuff within a 2-mile buffer of the roads. So that's kind of considered like a lost cause. Like where you have the asphalt, you're going to give up 2 miles on each side, a 2-mile straight line outward from the road. Those markets and stuff, they're run through a special contract through the National Park Service with what are called concessionaire services. So they're people who provide a service for profit inside of another organization. Like the guy who sells the hot dogs at the ballpark, that's a concessionaire for the ballpark. And so like Yosemite has Aramark, which is like a concessionaire that runs their buses, runs like the restaurants and the hotels and the bars and the supermarket. Those are not National Park employees, they're employees of the concession. Did that answer your question, Tiger? I don't know how much all of you follow the news, but there's been this interesting debate from our last president to our current one. Some land that was loosely protected was set up as a national monument that's sort of a mix of these managements by Barack Obama. And some of that land had been sought after to take out petroleum, but as a national monument, you're not allowed to do that. And so our new president cut down the Bears Ears National Monument to be much smaller. You can imagine there's always this debate, like, why are we saving it if nobody benefits? Is it better to have some businesses making profit from that land and presumably making jobs and other economic activity? Or is it better to hold that land but not actually use it? My buddy's dad has these amazing guns, but he won't shoot them. And the question's like, why do you have them if you're not using them? And he's like, because they're really amazing. I'm like, but how amazing are they if you're not using them? That's kind of the debate that happens with a lot of our land. It's like, what's the point of having it fenced off? If nobody's making money, nobody goes. Like, why? What's the... So there's been this back and forth where some people think we should have more land for utilitarian benefit. Some people think we should have more land for recreational or aesthetic benefit. That's an interesting political tipping point. Anybody want to talk more about this number 26 stuff? Yeah?
Why should we preserve the wilderness?
Kind of depends who you ask. That's what I was saying. That some people think we should preserve it just for the benefit of using it later. It's like going in the bank because we know we're going to get to it another day. Some people think we should just keep it because it's kind of special and neat. And like that's kind of the end of the story. Like we should just keep it because it's special and neat, and that's it. And so there's like a struggle in management. I'm a big fan of just keeping it because it's special and neat. But I don't know. I'm sure that sooner or later we'll use all of it. That eventually, when push comes to shove, all land will get used. So we just took a wilderness refuge in Alaska and opened it up to drilling. As soon as there was a Republican majority in both houses of Congress with a Republican president. That had been juggled around for about 30 years. It was called ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And I have a slideshow about that trade-off, except now it's settled and we finally just said, screw it, we're going to use it now. You know, sooner or later, if there's like no wood left on Earth, people are going to be like, I guess we're chopping down Yosemite now, you know, what do you do? Yeah?
Who regulates BLM?
It's called the Bureau of Land Management. It's actually a government agency. It's in the Department of the Interior, I think. Anybody else? Okay, one last thing for number 25. Please look up. With all that stuff that the U.S. manages or owns, you've got to wonder what happens to the rest, and the answer is it gets used up. One way or another, if somebody owns it, sooner or later they're going to use it. And that's why it's nice to own land. We would all like to own land. If I had land, I might cut down some stuff, or I might shoot some stuff, or I might put some of my favorite animals out there, or I might build some houses on it, or some factories on it, or dig up the rocks that are in the ground, or the petroleum there. That's the whole point of land ownership. You might remember, like, the first nitty-gritty day of this class, the tragedy of the commons. Like, the global solution to sharing without rules is to say, screw it, you can have this piece of land, and you can have this piece of land, and you can have that one, and you just put up fences. Problem is, if we just protect this one little space and we tell all the wildlife to stay there, we're realizing now that's not a really good plan. Because, you know, like, wildlife needs to move around. They gotta, like, find their food. They gotta, like, respond to climate change. They have to migrate. You know, a long time ago, we said, oh my God, this is like a beautiful condor. We had to save the condors, so we trapped them and we put them in cages and we made more condors, and then we let them go and they all died, right? So we shifted to ecosystem management. Well, this keeps evolving. We're like, oh my God, look at this beautiful little ecosystem. We have to protect the spectacular Yellowstone, just put a fence around it. And of course, now we realize that those edges of Yellowstone are kind of fuzzy. The wildlife moves in and out, climate changes. That ecosystem is moving outside its fences a little bit. So like reindeer gotta roam, and salmon gotta swim, and birds gotta fly and stuff. And of course, surrounding all of our protected areas is a bunch of danger. So in like cutting edge 2018 ecology, the modern understanding of conservation is, yeah, you definitely have to have some pretty big places, but you also have to connect them. Connectivity is a vocab term in number 25. Connectivity is to connect protected areas so they don't get isolated. Like maybe you put a bridge over a road so that the deer can cross, or in the desert, they put culverts underneath. So imagine if you're on the highway, we put up a whole bunch of fences this way, and a whole bunch of fences this way, and then we dig a tunnel underneath the highway. So that like the rabbits and like the deer like run into the fence, and then they all just get funneled underneath to get on the other side of the road without getting hit by cars. Little small scale stuff, like just digging some ditches underneath the highway, can connect habitat. Sometimes you need big continuous chunks of land. One of the largest continuously protected land masses on Earth is the California Sierra Nevada. We've basically got protected land from Mexico to Oregon. We got to protect where the birds fly, and we got to protect where the fish swim. Check it out. Small scale. Large scale. You heard of Ted Turner? Bazillionaire? So he has this crazy idea to start buying up all the ranches that are on the edges of wilderness areas. And he's going to use these ranches, they're private property, he can do what he wants because they're his dirt. But he wants to encourage connectivity, so he's like, if we're south of Yosemite, we'll take down the fences. So I can have my cows, we'll just put little cattle gates, and then if the wolves want to run through my farm, we'll let them move through. And his goal is to make a land bridge across the United States, so that there's either protected areas in federal management or his own areas in between, so that we can reach connectivity. How about that for a national heritage? Like, I gotta say, that's a pretty classy move. He's not going poor doing this. I mean, he's buying profitable ranches and staying profitable. But he's also thinking about long-term connectivity. I'm kind of impressed by this gesture. I thought it was pretty rad. These are the places where migratory birds move. They're called flyways. So like as birds fly from one place to the next, they make these series of pit stops. Like links in a chain. And of course, all sorts of wildlife migrates through watersheds. We have to protect those waterways to make sure that they can move. Fish can't jump through that. Mountain lions can't walk through that fence. You understand the value of genetics, genetic continuity, crop outbreeding, so to speak. Okay. Anybody want to talk more about any part of assignment 4.2? Given the test is on Friday, I have to say it's a little alarming how most of you are so passive today, not even having papers out or not writing on them. It's your call, I don't mind. But I'm not trying to just babble. Are we all good with 4.2? Fine by me. Assignment 4.3 was the movie questions. And we stopped during all the movies and we talked about them all at the end. But are there any questions about the film goals? Yeah. What is the question?
What is China's aquaculture solution? How does it achieve such high production efficiency?
What is China's aquaculture? So they do a bunch of different stuff, but they have multiple species, freshwater and vegetarians. They also use a lot of shellfish.
The next one is why stop the shellfish.
Is that a question too?
Yeah.
So shellfish are stationary. They're filter feeders, so you don't have to add other feed. And they tend to improve water quality. They're also really fast growing. People really like them. Yeah.
What happened at the Kesterson Reservoir?
So at the Kesterson Reservoir, a naturally occurring toxin in the soil reached really high levels because when you add more water to the land, you're going to get more of the stuff running out of the dirt, right? Like if there was naturally occurring salt, more irrigation will make the reservoir saltier. In this case, there was naturally occurring selenium, which is a toxin. It's spelled like this. And so if you're adding more water, you're going to get more of that ingredient in the places where the water builds up. And this was like a big tipping point for public opinion. It caused all these deformities in baby birds. It's like a bird refuge. And so as all these birds were all deformed, it was covered all over the news. And all over the United States, people were like, boo for water projects. And it was kind of like the last nail in the coffin. We didn't really build any new water projects after that. It was like a really visible public fiasco. What else? Other questions in 4.3? Questions left over from the movies? Yeah?
The promises and perils of open ocean aquaculture.
So the good news is, it's far away from land. So like waste doesn't build up, and you don't have migratory birds going by. Sorry, migratory fish, excuse me, going by. So like, there's no like diseases for the local salmon populations or whatever, because it's just out there. It's so far away that like poop just like spreads out into the deep ocean. Like there aren't like major highways of native fish right there. The flip side is, it's in the middle of nowhere, so it's difficult to monitor. People are worried about like storms. Open ocean is pretty burly. So like if something goes wrong, how are you going to fix it? And eventually, if fish escape, it could still be a problem. So having it be so far away is just kind of sketchy for like the control and management part.
What about with like predators breaking through nets and such?
I kind of wonder about that. I don't know. I think they're usually designed to be pretty much predator-proof. But you can imagine, right? Like if a predator gets in on the coast, you'll see it and fix it the same day. If a predator gets in and it's like 140 miles offshore, who knows when the conditions are good enough to get out there, when you'll notice, like you're not gonna have people there all day. So like the fear of having it far out is it's just kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and it's more fragile, I guess you would say. Less stable. Yeah?
30 have low-income farmers of Africa's Sahel found ways to conserve water and nutrients while protecting the fields from erosion.
One thing that they do is they plant wind-block trees, and so that slows evaporation and protects topsoil. Another thing that they do is this, they're called micro dams. So you just make these teeny little like curbs, and so runoff just slows down, and as it slows down, it soaks in more. So it's not like big old dams, it just improves groundwater supply. It keeps the soil a little bit more wet. Other movie questions? Yeah?
Can you go over the green revolution?
So everyone in the class should know the Green Revolution.
Yeah.
High yield varieties, more water, more pesticide and fertilizer. And Quinn, today in modern agriculture, like all the world's big problems are tied to agriculture. Like that's, like we get really pissed that agriculture changed so much, but the flip side is, the Green Revolution saved more lives than any medicine or any war or any invention. you know, world population doubled in a few decades, and food production tripled in the same period of time. Like the Green Revolution, like, prevented a huge human tragedy. So it was like a really rad idea. It just kind of created this modern agricultural beast. Anybody else on the movie questions? Okay, let's switch to 4.4. This isn't for credit. Don't lie, it doesn't help you to lie. I don't even remember what your grades are. I'm not entering grades for this. But just as a question, how many of you read or at least found the answer to the questions in all the articles? How many of you at least found the answers in all the articles yourselves? Okay. If you didn't, I understand you're busy, life is difficult, junior year is stressful, reading is boring, big words confuse me. I feel you. I completely understand this. Now the problem is, for me to explain entire articles, like 20 of them, to the whole class would take like 5 hours. So I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights. And if you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about and your notes go fast. If not, you probably want to write what I'm saying and then go back and read those articles. I want to do numbers 39 to 56 really, really, really fast. If you read them, I'm sure you're there. So, number 39. Oh my God, cavemen caused extinctions. Number 40, early weaning makes population growth. And if you can store food, you can specialize, different jobs, different levels, capitalism, political control. Our entire world order came out of agriculture. That's a fascinating article, number 40. Number 41, just a couple places on the map, it's not rocket science. Number 42, it's cartoons to explain like 6 words, it's really worth it. Number 43, again, it's just cartoons, and it echoes a lecture from unit number 0. Number 44, that place with that dam, that's a world-famous dam. If I'm not mistaken, that was the first international conflict over water. How many of you read all the articles so these notes are easy for you to use? How many of you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about? I apologize. If you can write down what I'm saying, it might help you when you get to look at these articles. If you wave it off, you know you're skipping points on the exam. Number 45, just a couple of notes. I don't think you need to memorize those numbers. The general ranking is important, but those numbers keep changing, so it's not like 1989 numbers are still going to be accurate today. Number 46, I think we've talked about this before, but here's a good article about it. You go to Lulu Dunaway's Poor Ass Country and you say, wow, you can grow chocolate. I'll pay you so much for chocolate. Lulu says, heck yeah, I'll grow your chocolate. All of Lulu's neighbors got no more carrots. This is actually a double-edged sword. We can say that that country has industrialized, because now they're part of the global economy and trading food. Lulu can say she's getting rich because she's making more money growing my chocolate than growing her neighbor's carrots. But look what happens to that community. I'm going to be in Mexico by Sunday. And the place where I go used to be an agricultural region. Now, there's no local food supply anymore. The only little supermarket, which is like a big gas station, they sell groceries from Costco. Like the owner of the supermarket goes to Costco, loads up the car, drives from Costco 6 hours to their grocery store, and sells to campesinos in Mexico Kirkland brand product that's sold at double Costco prices to cover the price of the trip and her profit to run her store. All the farmers in that neighborhood, they now grow one crop, which they sell to an exporter that probably sells it to Costco. It is fascinating how this works. Number 47. This is maybe one of the most important study goals of the year. It says, what are the social and environmental downsides of the Green Revolution? So now that we figured out how to crank out more food per acre, who cares? And then it says, how have the inputs and outputs of agriculture changed since the 1950s? I want to take a minute, just a minute, to talk about this one. I'm on number 47. I don't know if you saw my warm-up. But if you think about it, food is right at the top of basically all the huge environmental problems on Earth. Like, if you think that the biggest problem on Earth is habitat destruction and the impact on biodiversity, our number one habitat use is agriculture. If you live in California and you're worried about access to fresh water, well, our number one use of water in California, as well as the United States, is to make food. Or to make the energy for that food. If you're worried about climate change and air pollution, the primary source worldwide is our food supply. If you're an average American, you cause more global warming with your diet than you do with your car. We'll get to this in a second here, but the average American meal travels more than 1,200 miles today. Average. So think about the energy cost of our diet. In other words, if you care about biodiversity, if you care about water, if you care about climate change, those are all basically, you're going to have to look at food right away. Plus, think about all of our big health issues in the US, most of them tied to food. Plus, if you care about social justice, what could be more important for global justice than making sure that everybody can, at the very least, eat? Like, what is more important in justice than everybody getting to eat? I gotta say, I really struggle with something as a teacher. I teach you so much environmental science and it's all bad news. I teach you all these little details, and for a lot of the kids in the audience, I know that you got other stuff on your mind, and at some point it's just like, oh my God, I go to Jose's class and it's just more bad news and it's boring. But if you had to pick something that you could just focus on, just focus on food. I mean, how many times in your life are you going to buy a car? Like, even if you're rich, like crazy rich, like 10 cars in a lifetime would be a lot, right? Like 10 of those decisions before you die, like that's a crazy rich, healthy, like, oh my God, 10? Like me, I bought a car. I'm 41. Someday now I'll have to buy another one, okay. So yeah, you get to make some decisions about cars a few times in your life. Great. But most of the time, like at your age, when a car comes to you, it's like, oh, okay, well somehow this just worked out. It wasn't like you chose to save the environment when you bought your car. But you make food decisions like what, 4 times a day at least? Every day of your life? We're causing more pollution, using more land, using more water, impacting more biodiversity every day with our food. Globally, more and more people are starving to death. And we're finding more and more health impacts. So I gotta tell you, A, number 47 has a really good breakdown of this information. B, you should really focus on food. Like food is pretty much, that's like the bottom line. The easiest, everybody eats. Like everybody you ever talk to, they've got a share of this decision. Any environmental topic you're worried about connects to food. You should focus on food. And if I could just please make one public service announcement, just a personal opinion about being a good human being. Can you imagine how lucky we are that food falls at our feet everywhere we go? Like in this classroom, you come by and go, hey, I got this free food, take it. Like we are literally tossing around food that just falls at our feet. Like you have to recognize how lucky we are to be in that position. Like you have got to see that for what it is. Like the gods have graced us with extra food all the time. And like turn up our nose at food. Like when you go somewhere and somebody's like, here bro, I made you something, and you're like, nah, let's not eat that. Like, you should really reconsider that decision. We're being graced with like this abundance of like life-giving, expensive, globally harmful stuff, and what, we're gonna throw it out? Like, I don't know. I got all kind of food rules. I make food decisions all the time, but I'm also really grateful to be here, and I don't like food to go to waste, and I'll pretty much eat anything unless I'm not, unless I'm too full. Sorry, I had to rant about that because I feel like this whole unit's been about food, and I have no place to make that a study goal, so I just had to get that off my chest. I think about food every day of my life, all day long. I just like eating too, and I poop a lot. So I have to eat a lot. Yeah? What's your favorite food? Pretty much my favorite single thing on this earth? A fresh scallop straight out of the shell with a little bit of lemon on it. Like when I dive scallops and one of them breaks, I pretty much eat it underwater. Like I'll blow the snorkel and just eat it underwater. Anybody else? All right, number 47 anyway, important stuff about our food systems. Next. Number 48, yes, there is enough food for everybody, but we got to solve some logistical issues to make sure that they don't go hungry. Even if humans keep growing, if our population keeps increasing, we just got to spread the food around and stop wasting it in stupid ways. We can make plenty of healthy humans. Number 49, we've talked about this in 2 previous units. So by now you should all know you can feed 10 vegetarians or 1 carnivore as a global average. Number 50, as population grows, all we got to do is figure out how to get the food to the people. Yeah?
It's kind of just a conceptual question.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's a good thing that people don't have food, obviously. Like, I obviously want people to have food around the world, but like, if everyone did, in a sense, wouldn't our population problem be more of a detrimental issue to us then?
That's probably sooner or later. Yeah. I mean,
so,
although I should point out that hungry and starving people are usually the ones who have the most babies anyway.
Versus agriculture? Or-
Yeah, so like developed nations have the least children and they're not starving. You know, people will usually have rampant fertility if they have high death rates, because you know you can make babies nonstop, and then you know you're gonna have to. A few of those are gonna make it out of all the ones that starve to death. So it's not like letting people starve today affects their population growth. Coincidentally, if you give people other stuff to do, most of them would like to not just breed. And so we get to this in our next unit. That idea that ending world hunger will create a different problem is kind of the opposite. I know what you mean. I mean, like, conceptually, none of us likes it, but yeah, too many humans could probably be an even worse, another different problem. But letting them starve probably doesn't avoid that outcome. Doesn't look like it. Number 51, oh my God, sperm count. Number 52, hey, there's another problem with agriculture. It's the #1 source of water pollution, too. Number 53, there are so many benefits to a local diet. I mean, first of all, the food tastes better because it's fresher. That's got to be at the top of the list. Second of all, you know what's happening in your local politics. I don't know what's happening to grow my food in Ecuador, but around here, I can have an impact on local water policy. Here's another reason I have a local diet. If I buy my carrots from Tanner, Tanner's kids are probably going to go to my school, and that's going to keep me employed too. It's like paying your local dentist. It's good to have a dentist around. It's good to have a farmer around. Local diets are important. Food just tastes better. Did I already mention that? And by the way, we can like limit global climate change dramatically if we stop moving food. I mean, think about our system right now. I have no idea how far you got to ship those raspberries, but I want raspberries on my yogurt every day. So grow them anywhere you have to and just ship them straight to my mouth. That's our food system today. Average American calorie travels 1,260 miles. Imagine the carbon cost. On average, everything you've eaten moved 1,260 miles. Some of it moved more, for all of it that moved less. Man, that's crazy. Yeah, bro.
I thought you said the Central Valley was like a huge output of crops. So for people in California, would that tend to be less? Or?
That's probably reasonable to assume. We're closer to one of the big ag centers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as an American average, it might be better for you and me and worse for someone in Maine. Number 54, more stuff about energy costs and food. It's a really interesting table. Number 55, I'm not a crazy nutso about organic, but there are a lot of benefits. Number 56, it's right at the end, and I know a lot of you didn't read it, so I'm just going to try this out. Please look up. We make ethanol by growing a bunch of corn. But to grow all that corn, we got to put a lot of fossil fuels into chemistry and tractors and whatnot. So get this, we use 1.2 barrels of petroleum to make the corn that becomes 1 barrel of ethanol. So that we don't have to use a barrel of petroleum. Don't follow my math? We don't want to use the petroleum, so we use the ethanol. But we got to grow the corn. In order to do that, we got to use more petroleum than we're saving. Carbon positive, 1.2 to 1 right now. Biofuels are a good idea. Agricultural biofuels are a bad idea. We'll come back to this in 2 minutes. I don't think we're going to get a tour of the garden today. I'm sorry, I really wanted to. Raise your hand if you have any questions about any of the study goals. Yeah.
For 54, I just had trouble finding the percentage of food energy cost you can cut by growing it at home.
So, at least 50 or 60. If you go to that article, you can see how much goes into the transportation, storage, distribution. All that you wouldn't have to deal with if you're growing it at home. So that could just go out, even if you're growing it the same way. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 volunteers right away. I'll put up the key. Double the free response plus multiple choice is your score. I'll stop you in a minute to talk about the key. I got to get your appeals and papers before you leave today. Are there any questions? Usual test pass back, like you've done already. 8 volunteers, please go. 8 volunteers. Abby, can you stop streaming, please?